Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Special Edition. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live. There's also a PayPal and crypto link in the info box below this video. Now, we are joined by Captain Capslock and Anthony Riley to discuss the nonsense that has been put across by Conspiracy Flapz. So first and foremost, I'm going to say a big hello to Captain Capslock, or Capslock as we will call him, and Anthony. How are you both doing?
Yo, yo.
Yo, it's all fine.
So, where do we start with this? Nathan, I'm screen sharing. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, you're on.
Right, so this is basically the current position is the original claim. I kind of answered or debunked as kind of a straw man because I didn't address the original claim that was made because I wasn't sure how Conspiracy Cats was presenting his point because he referenced the height of Mount St. Helens. And I made that really clear in the previous video of Ranties, and I still believe that he was referencing the whole height of the mountain, even though he claims that he wasn't. But the reason why I created this straw man argument to debunk was because when I tried to validate the claim originally, I couldn't find the information relative to this side peak. I couldn't even find it on Google Earth. I couldn't find the peak itself in existence on Google Earth. I couldn't find any information on it, and I saw the value that he'd attributed to it, and I just couldn't work out where he'd got the value from because it just seems wrong. But I couldn't validate the claim, and that was one of the things that I said to Conspiracy Cats. I said, look, basically you need to prove not just where the picture was taken from, but you need to show what this side peak is. And I'm going to reassert this because this is really important. This side peak mountain that he claims, this mountaintop, his claim is that it can never be anything other than the way it's shown on a sphere. On a flat plane, it's much higher. That's what his position is. But it's to do with validating the claim. It's not to do with the geometry, and it's not to do with how you interpret the figures or how you play around with the math. This is literally to do with, is this side peak mountain verifiable as a fact for the height that he's claimed it at? And the short answer was I couldn't validate it, so I didn't go with it because I didn't know what the answer was. Couldn't ascertain it myself. I couldn't work out how we got to this number. So I created the straw man to debunk instead, and basically I'm fine with that. But since today's show, somebody's been in touch. That would be Capslock, and he said, "Look, this is what I've realised is what's happened here. Basically, this side peak elevation appears to be wrong." Significantly wrong, and it changes the maths in terms of everything if this figure's incorrect. So what me and Nathan have had is we've had an off-air hangout with Capslock, and he's presented the evidence, and I've got to say this is really compelling because we can't see any other way that this value can exist unless he's made this specific mistake. So what we're going to do is we're going to present to you where he's got this figure from for this side peak elevation. We're going to show how it's wrong, and then we're just going to laugh at them at the end of it, because basically the first thing that you do with any claim is you validate it. And I couldn't validate this because I didn't know how he'd got this figure. Now I do know how he's got this figure. And all I can say is that mistakes have been made. And basically it's cute. What's happened here is cute. So what we'll do is we'll get Captain Capslock to present his opposing argument or his opposing evidence. And then hopefully right at the end, we'll get Nathan to conclude the point. And then by the end of this, it should be the case that you guys can laugh at all the ballers, because I don't know where this number's come from. It could be dodgy. It could be an accidental mistake, or it could be done intentionally to make the angular size, make it match the ball by a deliberate mistake that they need us to find. And basically, it looks like Captain Capslock has got that. So we'll pass over to Captain Capslock, and hopefully he's going to be telling me which pictures to present. And hopefully between me and Capslock, we'll be able to make this presentation work. So Capslock, What can you tell us about this side peak? This side peak of Mount St. Helens. The claim is that it's 6,500 feet high.
So first of all, I want you to show the picture of the Wikipedia page, if possible.
The general Wikipedia page.
When I started, I watched the video of Conspiracy Cats and of Conspiracy Cats, and I wondered how it's possible that the elevation is so low compared to the mountain. So then what I did is I went on Wikipedia, and Wikipedia tells us that the prominence of the mountain, the St. Helen, is only 1,400 feet. So meaning the actual mountain you see that comes out of the terrain is only 1,400 feet high.
Yeah, because the rest of it's the elevation above sea.
Yeah, I can't read it on my screen at the moment.
Yeah, it's okay. The rest of it's the elevation above the sea. I can't zoom into this. It won't let me zoom in.
Yeah, so, it doesn't matter too much.
No.
To come to my point, then I went on Google and I checked out several pictures of the mountain. And so please present the picture of the last picture I sent.
The very last one?
Yes, exactly.
That one?
Yeah, I found this picture. And here you can clearly see where the actual prominence starts of the Mount St. Helen. And if you put it into relation, that the entire thing you see is only 1,404 meters high. And then if you try to realize that the small part that is marked in this picture is supposed to represent 620 meters of difference in altitude, it's not working out. If you measure the picture, you come to a value of about 250 meters, maximum 300 meters in between this area in difference from the main peak and the side peak. So
yeah, what you're saying is that from that line to that line at the top, it's claimed that that's 620 meters, but it's only 1,400 meters overall. So half of 1,400 meters is 700, and that kind of puts it in the middle. So if the gap is 620, it should be about there somewhere. So it's like it seems to be completely the wrong size. Correct?
Exactly. And when you do the math, then you will come to the conclusion that the side peak has to be at a minimum elevation of 2,250 to 2,300 meters. And if you put this then in the angular size calculator, you will notice that the angular size of the side peak is now bigger than the main peak of St. Rainer in the background.
Yeah, so what these next two slides show is that the angular size for Mount Rainier is, one of them is 1.51 and the other one is 1.505. So there's it's very, very close. And what we're comparing,
so the
like for like.
The 1.51 is the angular size of the side peak, and the 1.50 is the angular size of the distant mountain, St. Rainer. And
yeah,
he appears exactly slightly below the peak of Mount St. Helen. So
what I'll do, just let me present that on the screen. Just before you go any further, let me represent that on the screen, that on the original picture, balls. So basically what we're comparing is this side peak, the height of this side peak, the angular size of the side peak, to the Mount Rainier in the background, and they're almost identical, which is the way it's presented in the picture. So what this is basically proving, that this is actually consistent with the angular size on the flat plane, because all the angular size calculators are done on straight lines. They're not done on curves. They don't conform to the shape of the Earth. They're done on straight lines. So basically what this proves is that the angular size of this peak, if we've come to the conclusion correctly that he appears to have got this completely wrong, these are both identical and it's matching the picture. So the question really is, have we come to the correct conclusion with regard to the side peak? Because we reckon they've exaggerated the side peak to make the maths fit. Because if you do the side peak the way that it looks like the way we've presented it, it looks like the side peak is wrong, and the way we presented it is right. And it's because it looks like someone's played with the maths. I'm just going to say it. It looks like somebody's deliberately put this figure in to make the angular size calculators match the ball Earth. If you deliberately get the side peak wrong. And I couldn't validate this when I first looked at it. I couldn't work out where the number had come from, but I could tell that something was wrong. And I was going to ask him directly, but I don't have a direct line of contact with him. But where this number comes from is important. And it looks like what they've done is they've used the wrong process, and then, well, they've used the right process, but realised, if we make this a little bit bigger, this then supports ball, and then it's up to us then to catch them out and prove it. But we think we've caught them out. We think that they've deliberately put this side peak in at the wrong size because it then supports ball and relied on us to try and find out or to spot it and then work out exactly what they've done and show it. Now, I'm not saying that we're absolutely dead on right, but what I am saying is that this side peak elevation is wrong because we couldn't validate it up the first time we looked at it. So I guess really it's kind of like batting the ball back to their side of the table now, because we think that this figure that you've put on the original claim to do with this side peak, we don't know. We can't validate this number. We don't know where this number's come from. We think we know where it's come from, and we think you guys have been sleight of hand and made it sneaky. So really, it's kind of over to you guys now to show where this figure actually did come from and show that we're wrong in our perception that you guys have been cute. Nathan, what do you think?
But then on the other hand, if the figure is actually right, then how can you explain the so small distance between the side peak and the main peak? It just doesn't add up.
Yeah, you got to explain the difference between the two, because I completely agree. It doesn't appear that these values that are quoted are anywhere near accurate. Nathan, do you want to add anything or transpose anything I've just said into a different language for other people to see?
Well, I'm hoping Caps Lock will just go through it again in terms of how he's come to the incorrect percentage of the remaining part above that red line. So can you, obviously this is our assumption in terms of how we assume he has calculated it.
I think that eventually they did the mistake that they thought the entire mountain that is seen on the picture of Conspiracy Cats would resemble the actual 2,500 meters. I think that they just then reduced the percentage missing and came to the conclusion, it has to be 500, 600 meters, something like this. But if you watch at the mountain from side elevation, it becomes clear that when you put a line on the top of the mountain and a line on the top of the peak, and then you can measure the picture, it will tell you that the relationship that the side peak is at least 22 to 21% lower than the main peak. And this simply doesn't add up, because we saw in Wikipedia that the mountain is, so to speak, the mountain itself is at an elevation of already 1,100 meters.
Yeah.
So, and I think Conspiracy Cats put everything from sea level up until 2,500 meters into consideration, instead of working out the relationship based on the 1,400 meters, that actually the mountain is big on top of the 1,100 meters.
Yeah, because it's 460. Let's go back to Conspiracy Cat's picture. I knew it would do that. I should have gone the other way. Right, so his claim is that the side peak is 6,500 feet, right? So, but when you look at this local in its local topography, it's the prominence figure that you're looking at. That's the actual height of it in its area, which is the picture that we've got. You're looking at around about 1,400 feet. Now, if 1,400 feet is the height of the mountain down to the base where it sits, right? It means that hopefully I'll end up back with it. It means 1,404 meters, the prominence height in local to the area. Basically, this cannot represent this height that he's talking about because it's way too big. So it does look like he's using it from sea level and then trying to take off a guess based on, well, I don't know what it's based on. I don't know if it's a guess. Has he measured it with a ruler?
No,
I'm not quite sure.
Well, let's see if Captain Capslock agrees. Do you think that he has taken the entirety of from sea level to the peak and then taken that as a percentage based on its angular size and reduced that off the total height?
Yeah, I could think this is possible. If you would imagine that you would replace on my picture, if you would go back to it with the last one you had open, if you would replace the 1,404 with 2,505, then I would agree to the measurement. It would make sense to assume that the side peak is 500 or 600 meters below the peak. But the reality of the matter is that it's only 1,400 meters. And
so let's just.
I don't have to.
Let's just restate that. Instead of using the prominence height 1,404, what was the other height that it said? There we go. So if we go with 1 foot, it's 2,550, right? So 2,000. So if this number was 2,550, then that number 6, 12, 18, 24, and then a little bit. I could see that being about right if he's used that whole elevation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense.
That's when you explained it to me, that's where I saw the numbers falling in order to get that proportion that he's got in that number. Just for people who might not have twigged already, just to dumb it down just a little bit, what's the prominence?
The height of the mountain on its elevation, on the plane that it's at the time, not above sea level, not down to the sea. It's whatever the elevation the mountain's base sits at.
Yeah, exactly.
So the prominence is basically from sea level to the point where you've drawn, I'll just circle it for the audience's benefit, to here. And then the height of the mountain is from...
No.
Sorry,
No, the prominence is only what I draw inside this picture.
So the prominence is the height of the mountain on its base where it sits.
Yeah, exactly, but not the height of the base.
Gotcha.
It is only the height of the mountain itself.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So the prominence height is the height of the mountain where it sits.
If this mountain is 8,000 something feet high, then it sits on an elevation of 3,800 feet, and only 4,600 feet can be seen. So 1,100 meters is the elevation where the mountain starts, and 1,404 meters is the prominence. It is the elevation of the mountain itself. In contrast with the plane it's on.
Gotcha. So if you give an elevation, you're talking about from sea level. If you give a prominence, you're talking about its relation to the level of land that it sits on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I see. So in other words, to boil this back down again, it seems as though to get the proportion of this side peak, what he has done is taken the elevation of the entire mountain, and then given that, what did he get it to, 500 feet, was it, or 500 meters, I forget which.
620 meters, it's also in the pictures.
620
I put the
meters.
number inside there.
But that seems to fall in line with taking the elevation and then reducing it down based on where the new side peak sits. But that's disproportionately large, because the actual proportion that he should be taking off should be based on what you can see, where it sits in its environment, and it's considerably smaller. It's not as high as the elevation would suggest.
Yeah.
Exactly. To measure the angle, he still needs to use the height from the side peak to the sea level. But in this case, to figure out the height of the side peak, you can only use the prominence to get the value. It doesn't make sense to take it from sea level.
Okay, so once we've got the prominence height and we've calculated an approximate angular size to reduce off the prominence height, not the elevation, when you plug that into the calculator, it matches precisely what we see in the picture, i.e. the angular size of the mountain in the distance sits about the same height as the side peak, based on their angular size only.
Yeah, so you've got 1.51. It's basically 1.52. It's 1.51299. So basically it's 1.52. That would be for the one that's furthest away. No, that was the nearest one.
No, that's for the one in the front.
Yeah, the one in the front that's at Mount St. Helens. And then for the one that's furthest away, that's 1.50. but it's basically it's virtually identical. 1.50
Yeah, it's a
compared.
little bit smaller.
Yeah,
Like that's exactly what we observe in the picture.
yeah. So what it means is that, I mean, we might be wrong here, but we're trying to work out how it is that we were unable to verify the original claim that was made for the height of that little side mountain, because hang on, let me go back to it. So this now takes it back to the start. Originally, when he made this side peak claim of 6,500 feet, I couldn't work out where that number had come from. So that's why I created a straw man to debunk instead. And basically, it still debunks it anyway, but this is just debunking it twice. Because the reality is, if you work out what this elevation actually is by citing the prominence and then looking at the relative ratio of the prominence to the mountain, then you realize that this 6,500 feet is massively wrong. But then when you readjust for it, the way we've perceived it, basically you get the same angular size. So it's like, what's going on here? Why is it that it's so difficult to find this elevation of the side peak? And basically what we're doing is saying, right, come on, conspiracy cats, show us your maths for where you got this value from, because we think you've made a mistake. And the mistake that's been made, I'm going to call it cute, because I think that someone spotted that this is the difference between proving a flat plane and making a little bit of doubt for ball. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not cute. Maybe it's an innocent mistake, but it's definitely a mistake because that value doesn't match the claim. That I don't know where that number comes from. So I'd like to know where you got that value from.
Well, we do know where that number came from. So Captain Capslock went through it with the maths when he first got on the call with me and basically explained that that number would come from the entirety, let's get the terminology right, the elevation value, and then an angular size extrapolation of the reduction to get to that number. Am I correct?
Sure.
Hold on.
Sure.
That's correct. That is when he is innocent. If he is guilty, then he changed the elevation to a point that it fits his model. It's also very well a possibility. I don't say he did, but it's possible.
Yeah, I'll say he did, because if I throw stones, then he'll throw stones back. Well, I'll say that you deliberately did that because it manipulates the figures to make it look like it's a curve.
I mean, if you think about it, they now claim that this observation fits the globe model, meaning if the peak was indeed higher, it wouldn't fit the globe model. So if it is indeed higher, he has to make it lower or it wouldn't fit his model.
Correct.
So you think, so hold on, so do you think that he's potentially he's made a mistake, someone's come to his assistance and then misrepresented it deliberately? Is that what you're saying?
Or he's done it intentionally?
It's very possible. If you take a look at the side elevation, or the side peak elevation that he claims at 1932 meters, that is not a value that you can get out of measuring a picture, for example. It looks like a calculated number to me.
Yeah, I would say it's a calculated number as well. It's not, because he hasn't. The thing is, right? He should, if it wasn't calculated, it'd be 6,500 feet, wouldn't it? So I mean, it's a question of how's he got to it. And I agree. I think the way he's done it is he's used the elevation data and then proportioned it with a ruler.
Well,
might be wrong.
Doesn't what's the asterisk for? So picture elevation, 1075 feet.
Well, this is the claim. I don't know where the asterisk is. I don't know where he's. Oh, both perspective and standard atmosphere taken into consideration. Picture elevation 1075. I think he's just doing this to pinpoint the height that he's at.
Sorry, Anthony. You did mention something about the elevation claim, Captain Capslock. Well, I can't remember what you said now. Sorry.
I don't know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm sure there was an extrapolation that you came to in terms of the picture elevation also being incorrect. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think maybe it's possible that he was assuming that on his picture would be depicted the entire mountain. And for this reason, he thought that the side elevation has to be around 500 or 600 meters lower.
Yeah, I do agree.
Either this or they put this number on purpose, because if they say this matches their model, then they need to put this number. They have the need. They can't say it's 300 meter higher and then say still it matches our model. Just doesn't make sense. Regardless of this, the calculation they use in the water Biston calculator, they don't even have atmosphere into consideration. They just demonstrate light travel indefinitely straight through our atmosphere forever, and this is a ridiculous claim, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, okay. I guess we can conclude by saying that this is all subject to where they got this value from, and we think we know where they got it from. And if they did get it from where we say they got it from, it's exaggerated, intentionally or not. That's debatable.
I mean, if you take a look at the other picture where I showed where I put the drawings inside, this is a normal available picture for every person on Google, and this picture doesn't lie. It shows the mountain in its entirety. The entire prominence is shown in this picture, and this picture doesn't lie in the end. You can do the maths yourself.
Yeah.
If you come to the conclusion that this small bit is 620 meters, then maybe something is not right with your eyes.
Okay, so can I summarize then? So in essence, what we are asserting is that our belief is that Conspiracy Cats has taken the elevation value to give him a 620 meter value between the peak and the side peak, and this is disproportionate when you actually look at the prominence height of the mountain as displayed on screen now, because the overall height that you would get that proportion from doesn't leave you with 620 meters of difference between those 2 points. It leaves you with considerably less. So our assertion is that he has used the elevation value to give him a larger number where you can see the arrow up and down in that space. Because when you look at it in this view, you can see that that is a disproportionately large value. It's far bigger than it should be. Now that supports their argument, but it's wrong.
So I guess
if they can show a source which claims the elevation of the side peak is indeed 1900 meters, then they have to explain this photograph, because this photograph does definitely not take into account the entire mountain until the sea level. Everyone can see this.
Correct.
Cool.
Now that this whole argument.
And wait, one moment. So you can also show 1 second, please, the comparison between the two mountains before and after the eruption in the 1980s. Just to give an idea that we are talking about the correct side peak. There is only this one.
Yeah, so basically this peak on the left-hand side is this peak that's here. Now, obviously, the rest of it goes missing after the eruption, but this bit on the left is that bit there. And then this bit over here on the right is the continuation of the collapse that's here somewhere. So once it's internally imploded for whatever reason, I thought volcanoes went up, but anyway, basically what we're looking at here is the before the event in 1982 and after the event in 1982, and we're looking at one of these peaks. But I mean, it comes back to the point. Let's go back to that picture. If the height of this mountain, the prominence height of this mountain is 1,404 meters, then you can clearly see that this value of 620 meters for the gap's clearly wrong. And that's where we've got to throw the stones, and we say that you guys have made a mistake or somebody who, I guess, I don't know whether it's Conspiracy Cats or whether it was the guy that originally sent the picture. But when he's the original claim that Conspiracy Cats is pushing, so really it falls with Conspiracy Cats, he's the one that's pushing it. This elevation for this side peak needs to be explained. Where did you get the figure from? Did you use the elevation or did you use the prominence? And if you did use the elevation, do you agree that that's wrong?
That's pretty much it. Anything else you want to add, Captain Caps Lock? If not, I'll round out.
Oh, that's all.
Anthony, anything?
Yeah, one last thing. Just give me a sec while I get to my window. Liverpool are winning 1-0. There's only 5 minutes to go. Come on, Liverpool. Woo!
And with that, I'm going to say a massive, enormous, huge thank you to both Anthony and Captain Capslock for making this special edition possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing it. If you hated it, then smash the dislike button twice. But if you liked it, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you've not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!